Sure.
And I think that with some effort, people could come up with materials which present other information on the other side of the controversy.
Okay. Do you accept that, Mr. Joyner?
Yeah, I believe that's a good argument. I do have a closing statement if,
Well, we'll get
if
to
and
that.
when.
So your position is that, well, you've stated it.
I'll say that the textbook is only very one-sided. It does not present any clue to young students that there is controversy. It presents it as fact, as information. I will say that there are plenty of process experiments in the textbook, things that students can work through to learn the processes of science. But the content in these chapters is presented as one-sided, only one view, and makes no effort to point out the fact that there are plenty of scientists who do not believe in this theory.
Okay. All right.
The issue before us today, as identified by the issue statement, is do the following instructional materials adopted by the Martin County School Board on March 20th, 2018 meet the criteria for state-adopted materials pursuant to Florida statutes. According to Section 1006.28, the school district is responsible for adopting courses of study, and which includes the instructional materials for use in our schools. The course progressions, which is in tab 2 of the binder, support that we have in fact adopted these courses and are teaching them in our district as required under the statute. The two books that are being discussed today, Elevate Science Course 2 for grades 7 Comprehensive Science and Florida Biology for Biology 1, both on the state of Florida's short bid list for science instruction materials, were approved at the March 28, 2018 board meeting for use in these two courses. And I mention this because this is part of the issue before us today. Have we adopted materials pursuant to those statutes, and are they meeting the intent of those statutes? Florida Department of Education determines the standards to be taught in those courses that we teach here in the school district. Copies of the course descriptions, including the required standards, are provided in tab 4. As educators in the state of Florida, we must teach students the approved standards, and these standards are uniform across all schools and all districts in Florida and adopted by the state in those course code descriptions. We do not create the standard, we don't write the standard, but we're required by law to teach them. Therefore, the school district approved the instructional materials before us today that are aligned to those state standards, which, as mentioned, are required to be taught in the district. In fact, the approved biology textbook is the updated copyright of the currently adopted and used biology textbook. It's been in use in our classrooms here in the district for about 6 years. The Martin County School District, as referenced in the issue statement, has followed the state adoption process even further than the extent required. We follow all of the processes, even though not required, because the books are on the state adopted list. And those books are in alignment with Florida Statute 1006.40 and also follow 1006.31. So we believe these materials should be made available to the students enrolled in grade 7 Comprehensive Science and in Biology 1. And Mrs. Gaynor, our science expert, the coordinator of science, will share with you how, in fact, these materials do align to those standards.
Good morning. Good morning. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate all of you for coming out to support.
Your name for the record?
Valerie Gaynor. I'm the K-12 Science Coordinator for the Martin County School District. I have a bachelor's degree in K-5 Unified Science, a master's degree in Biology, and Educational Leadership. I've taught for over 15 years in 3 different states and 2 different countries. I've taught in our local Martin County School District at Jensen Beach High School. I taught biology, marine science, anatomy and physiology, and have tutored many students in this local county.
Take your time.
I've also been a science administrator for 5 years. I've served on science committees local and statewide. I currently am on the board for the state science supervisors and work closely with the Department of Education, staff members, and the science coordinators throughout the entire state of Florida. Today, I'd like to start out with just explaining how the science standards came about. They're the next generation Sunshine State standards. The purpose of them is to provide an actual expectation for what students must know and be able to do within the course. Martin County School District does not choose nor determine what these standards are. They are provided by the State of Florida Department of Education. We are in the public school system, so we implement the approved standards and we require our teachers to teach those listed standards that are in the course descriptions. I already went through and showed you where those were. They're in Exhibit 4A and B. Those are the course descriptions. They say all the standards, including our science standards, include English language arts and math standards as well. The course descriptions provide standards required by the state of Florida to be taught in each course. We also provide our teachers with the test item specifications, which equips them with benchmark clarifications. So we have standards, but then it tells the teachers how, I guess, for example, how deep to go in the standards, and I'll get into that a little bit more because I have examples. If you look, there is in District Exhibit 8A, I did pull out. This is the definition for evolution that's given directly because this is something that we're referring to, and in this is a culmination, a cumulative change in characteristics of organisms or a population over time from generation to generation. So this is what the state gives us a definition to use. This is what students are tested in biology, but also our 8th grade test that we have is accumulation of their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards. So this would be a piece of that 8th grade test as well. And that's why when I say it's the 8th grade item specifications, it's because that's where they're housed, those specific standards. So the next exhibit that I have is the 7th grade standards, and that is in the 8C. And then finally, and these are all from the item specifications, the biology. I didn't want to make copies of the entire item specifications for everyone, but you are welcome to them if you would like to look at them. But I did pull out the related standards that we're talking about that were in the book. When I looked at all of the objections, I took into account, these are the page numbers. I tried to pull those standards directly out of the book. So the purpose of our instructional material is to supply our teachers and students with resources to provide a comprehensive understanding of standards. If you'll refer to 6B, this is actually the bid list. I did go in and highlight that this is the state of Florida's short bid list. This means that they have been reviewed by the state of Florida. If they've made it onto the list, they are approved as instructional materials for the state of Florida. And both of these books, I did highlight them in yellow, I believe, on there for you. Both of these books are on the bid list. Therefore, they've been approved by the state as appropriate science instructional materials. The 2 books have also been reviewed. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it's 8 of 15 and then 11 of 15. But I highlighted them in yellow on the bid list. The 2 books have also been reviewed and approved by the Martin County School District Instructional Review Team, which that was comprised of, we had public, we had teachers, and I was the coordinator for it. I was not a voting member. And then also, it has been approved by the Martin County School Board. Currently, we are using this Miller and Levine textbook, the one with the parrot on it, and this is the updated version that we are putting forth to be approved. It is an updated version. It has more current and accurate information and discoveries. They've also changed, but I will tell you that many of the things are the same, but they are updated throughout. Next, I'd like to go over just in Exhibit 7A. These are the specific standards found in both textbooks that I believe, when I was reading through the objections, these were the related standards. So as you can see, most of these are related to the theory of evolution. So obviously stated by the gentleman here that theory of evolution. That being said, these two books specifically provide information about investigating in our natural world and how scientists use a systematic approach that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions about the universe. The vast majority of scientists have concluded that the processes known as evolution account for the unity and the diversity of life. These authors, and I am taking information from the authors, have found that that is the reason that they focus these units, not only because it is as they told me, and it's within here as well, it is an accepted explanation of predictions in our universe.
When you say it's within here, you're talking about,
I'll promise I'll show you.
so we all,
where the-
well, just
Yep.
for the record.
No, absolutely. So
Which page are you-
inside of the notebook, we contacted the authors of both of the books, and I want to make sure that everyone realizes that the Millers are different Millers. So the Miller that's on this book is actually a different Miller.
Okay, when you say this book, you have to identify.
Okay, I'm sorry. For the record, for the biology book, Miller, this is a different Miller than the Miller in the Elevate Science 7th grade
Thank you.
course. Thank you, sorry. Our school district has provided the objections to the authors. And since they were not able to attend today, you can review all of their responses for each of the objections in 7B. So if you go to 7B, we have copies of the objection, and then if you turn to the next page, the author has provided their summary of the information to answer. But I'd like to provide you with a couple of excerpts from the authors that support the scientific evidence. One of the things that is being talked about today is theory and how we look at theories and laws and how they need to be taught in our schools. So we have a 7th grade standard, and that 7th grade standard is in 8B to be, the standard is recognize and explain the difference between theories and laws, and give several examples of scientific theories and the evidence that support them. So as you're going through that, this benchmark gives you many clarifications on how it should be taught in the classroom. The students should be able to tell the difference between a theory and a law. And today we are only talking about theories. We have not been discussing laws. Students will identify examples of theories or laws, and students will be able to explain why theories may be modified, but are rarely discarded. So this is giving an example that the students should be able to critically think, because we are providing information throughout their entire education. We have nature of science standards built in to all of our science courses. This standard, as well as other nature of science standards taught throughout the grade levels, support that theories must be supported by evidence and that they may be modified and updated. In regards to the next, there was another objection that was on the Elevate Science, the 7th grade book. The objector was asked, what do you feel might be the result of a student using this material? They stated that students cannot critically think. The Florida Elevate Science program provides ample support in critical thinking. They provide activities that are a key part of the program. The lessons present opportunities for students to critically think, analyze the relationships when they are given new information and old information. They have to clarify different pieces. Also, one of the pieces that I thought was interesting is on page 332 in the Elevate Science book, when it talks about Darwin's hypothesis, specifically on that page, it also talks about developing a theory. So it's specifically saying that this is a theory. We developed a hypothesis, now we have to explain what a theory is. The next objection was on the fact that students would not be able to critically think, and that was towards the Miller and Levine biology book. The author states, so the author gave us information, the author states, critical thinking is one of the principal themes of the book. It has case studies, problem-based assessments, and laboratory experiments that promote critical thinking throughout the entire book. He also states that it is an important note, however, authentic critical thinking does not involve misleading students by presenting ideas that have been rejected for cause by the scientific community in a way that gives them equal standing to accept a well-tested theory and principle. Also, the author spends much time on discussing theory in the biology book. The author provides information on the definition of theory, which is given on R-23, which is a well-tested explanation, unifies a broad range of observations and hypotheses, enabling science to make accurate predictions about a new situation. The nature of the scientific theory is discussed in detail on page 14 with the similar language. In fact, the general accepted definition for a scientific theory is that it applies very well to the theory of evolution. Evolution has been tested as a scientific theory for more than 160 years. It is unified by observations in the field, ranging from biochemistry, paleontology, microbiology, and it enables scientists to accurately make predictions in a number of ways. While no scientific theory is ever regarded as proven beyond a shadow of doubt, the theory of evolution is generally accepted and as a central organizing principle in the science of biology, as the textbook states. So this is pulled directly from the author. As a school district, we understand the requests of the presented by the objectors, which is also to present alternate theories. However, as stated, the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards course descriptions that you can refer to in 4A and B are the only standards that we are asked to teach. The textbooks are not the sole resource that are used in our classrooms. And I know that you can verify that just by if you've been in our classrooms. Our teachers do pull other resources. This is one resource that we make sure that they have to start with. But we do require our teachers to support our state standards as these two books, Florida Biology by Miller and Levine, and Elevate Science, Pearson's Elevate Science 7th grade course. For the standard, one of the main standards that we're discussing, and mostly we've been discussing today, the Miller and Levine biology book. The standard is SC 912.L15.1 requires that students, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, D. Yep. Yep, 8D. Explain how scientific theory of evolution is supported by the fossil records, comparative anatomy, comparative embryology, biogeography, molecular biology, and observed evolutionary change. Florida's science standards do not call for any such material that includes presentation of alternative theories. This approved textbook supplies students and teachers with the information, case studies, and learning activities required to meet our state standards. These textbooks offer students the opportunity for students to do scientific observations, experiments, and have their own discoveries. Scientific fact is a framework by which we unify our theories and construct our tests. This is true for the theory of evolution and even the cell theory as well. In regards to the objection of these materials, most of the individuals who examined a finite amount of the textbook. Thus, it is impossible to know whether they might have found any specific problems with the material as a whole, which is how our students will be exposed to it. In order to create a critical review of the material, the entire book should have been reviewed because the objections presented is that it is not a balanced instruction. If the material was not reviewed in a thorough manner, we argue that the opinion or the objection cannot be developed when only a small amount of the material has been reviewed. Also, few of the objectors have read any critical reviews on the material or that they posted on their objection. So there's no citations, nor reference materials, nor information being offered as to what the examples the book is missing. Another point to be brought up to the objection is that students would believe in evolution, since evolution is presented with available facts in a way that might lead them to conclude that make conclusions based on evidence that evolutionary process have shaped the history of life and continue to shape it, but this book does not explain that students should believe it, nor do the standards indicate that students should be believing in evolution.
All right. Anything else?
No. Do you
All
have
right.
any questions?
Then, Mr. Robinson, would you like to present your closing remarks?
Well, what I read earlier was my closing remark that that my objection is based on that one statute of accuracy, being objective and being balanced. And I also stated that I agree that the book develops the processes of science well with the activities and the experiments that it would take the students through. However, the foundation of written material that they would use in going into these activities and processes is the text. And the text does not give them any leeway or any variance from the evidence presented on evolutionary science. I appreciate the thoroughness of what you've done here. In my teaching experience, I've been on textbook selection committees before, and I know the amount of work that it takes. I've never had to be in your shoes of defending the choice. However, I will say it's not my first experience in arguing against the evolution. When I taught sixth grade science, I was required to teach a unit on Earth history and Earth and the age of the Earth. And the three of us who taught the same course argued and spoke to our science supervisor, and we felt like this is not proven science. We're presenting only one side. And, you know, in our situation, which was, we were allowed to choose another subject because it was elementary science. We didn't have to teach this. I realized that you are required to teach this evolutionary science by the state mandates. But I don't think it has to be taught as the only answer. And I don't think it has to be taught without giving students knowledge that there are gaps in the theory. Because this textbook and the teacher are the authority. They are the authority that the students will believe, that they will walk out of that classroom being influenced by, and many of them will never seek further information. And so they are going to be influenced greatly by this textbook. I realize that you've satisfied all the standards, but the content of the book is what I'm objecting to. And the content is teaching that this is the way it is. This is the way that life was formed, and not giving the students any room to believe that, or even if it would just offer the fact that there is controversy, I think that would be a great step. And you said that this is not a new textbook, that you're using the same textbook now, but this is an updated version of that textbook. Well, then I would say that this is probably not unusual, that this subject has been taught for 160 years, as you said. Maybe it's time to change, since science is changing, and since authorities in science, and many, many esteemed scientists are saying that there are problems with this theory. Maybe it's time for us to change that and offer to students that there is room to believe that there could be other science.
All right. Anything further?
Nothing else. Because of mine.
Mr. Joyner?
Yes, I think Al took much of the words out of my mouth on that last, on his closing statement. I also believe that whereas you do meet all of the state requirements, I'm not arguing against the state requirements. Of course, I am arguing against the text itself. As he was saying, the text is what it is. And as I have previously stated, there are inaccuracies. And these inaccuracies have not been mended over time. They were taught when I was a kid, and apparently they're still being taught, regardless of what even, higher education as college is teaching something different. And so, of course, I'm not arguing against next generation. I'm arguing against biology. But I do find it ironic that the name is Next Generation when it is clearly built off of generations upon generations of the same material that has not the same inaccuracies, that just are used as little experiments, little things to explain the theory better. And I understand that it's difficult, but I also believe that in Martin County that we can do better. And so I will deliver my conclusion. is that I hope I have not bored you all with the talk of science and intellectuals arguing back and forth about the science of biology. And perhaps now you understand or remember how children feel when they have to sit and listen to a new professor trying to make a point. But just to leave you with this, I think we would all agree that every second of instruction, no matter how boring, is important for the developmental growth of our students. I just implore you to consider the argument I have laid out and decide whether it has any merit. If you feel that I have a compelling discourse, then please do everything in your power to rectify the situation. Make certain that our students do not have to sit and listen in vain. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. That will conclude the hearing.
Well, we have a closing.
Oh, do you have, excuse me, I'm sorry. You do have a closing. I apologize.
Gentlemen, we'd like to thank you, and I can assure you, you did not bore us. As Mrs. Gaynor will tell you, she has made it her mission to ensure that people believe science is important. It's kind of her tagline or hashtag or whatever it might be, that she is really on a mission to make science a top priority in learning for students. And so clearly you didn't bore anyone today, so thank you.
I've got a lot of notes.
And also, Mr. Robinson, I want to thank you for recognizing all the work that goes into a textbook adoption process. You mentioned that you've been through this before, so you know we do take a lot of pride in the Martin County School District in following the law, what we believe the intent of the law is, and going through every single process in the procedure and ensuring that we bring in members of the public, members of the school communities, teachers, anyone who wants to review the books. And so we go to great lengths to publish the materials online and make that information available. And so thank you for recognizing the work of the committee and the teachers. We appreciate that. And as you already know, we believe we have followed all of the standards. We believe we've followed the state statutes, and specifically in the adoption of the materials, the process that we followed. And as stated in the issue statement, we believe that we must adopt materials pursuant to Florida Statute 1006.31 or Statute 1006.403D. We believe we do both, not just one or the other, but clearly both of them in our assessment of these materials and in bringing them forth to the school board. And the Elevate Science Course 2 for grade 7 in Florida Biology, they do align with the Florida standards. And I think, as you mentioned as well, you're not arguing with the standards. We all clearly realize that these are what we must teach. We don't have a choice. We don't have an option. We will teach evolution as defined in the standards, and we will use materials to support that, to give teachers what they need in their classrooms to be able to support the teaching of the standards as required. But as we also mentioned, we don't decide when to change standards and when to modify them or when to update them. Those are prescribed to us, and so that's something that might be an issue for the Florida Department of Education as they move forward with revision of standards, as you mentioned, the next generation science standards. And that just isn't something that is an option for us as a district. And understanding that we must teach these standards, including the theory of evolution, and specifying that it is a theory. It's outlined in the approved materials and addressed in the manner outlined in the law. The materials are free of pornography and material prohibited under Section 847.012. They're suited to the needs of students and their ability to comprehend the material presented, and appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the materials are used or made available. So we do believe that these materials have been properly identified and presented to the board and approved for use in our classrooms.
All right, anything else? No. Good. This hearing is now adjourned then. Thank you very much. I will consider all that people have presented and render an opinion recommended to the school board within 14 days. Thank you.
Good job, Nathan. Yeah.
What's funny?
Skirted the issue.
What's funny is that they're trying to make it sound like we were against the statutes. I mentioned, and you mentioned multiple times,
Yeah.
no problem with the statutes.
Thank you guys for coming.